Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. We are here with Dave from New Hampshire. Finally, somebody from New Hampshire. So I'm so excited. I get to scratch it off my list. And Dave works in security out in New Hampshire, but he's got a bit of a Bostonian accent to him. So I'm loving that. Love Boston. So, what is your first question for me today, Dave?
So, um, what happens when the, the morning of the funeral, when everybody is led out to either the limo for the family or their vehicles to proceed to the church? Um, what do you guys do with, like, how do you pack the casket up and prepare the deceased to make that trip to the church?
Um, well, you mean like going from the funeral home over to the church for the service, or like out to the car to go to the cemetery, or
Yeah, I guess I should have said, how do you pack them up and prepare them, like the casket, to head out to the hearse? What needs to be done in order to move the casket from the funeral home to the hearse?
okay, well, there's two different paths, I guess. So if we were packing up to, let's say, head to the church to go set up for a funeral, would be very different than if we were exiting to go to the coach to go to the cemetery or something. So I'm going to do both because why the heck not? So if we were
Okay.
going over to the church to go set up for a service, we would lower the bed of the casket. So when we close the casket, the person's face doesn't touch the lid because we don't want makeup. We don't want, first, we don't want it pressing on them regardless, but we don't want to get makeup transfer on the lid, which can happen. Even if they're this close, you hit a little bump and their nose hits, and then you get to the church and you open it and you got makeup on the lid and you're scurrying to try and clean it. So sometimes we'll lay a Kleenex over the person's face or like a paper towel. So that way we make sure that that makeup doesn't transfer on anywhere else over the hands, depending how extensive the cosmetics had to be. Some people will put blocks, like little styrofoam blocks or wood blocks that they've fashioned from the feet to the base of the casket. And they do that so then when you're driving, the person is not shifting back and forth as you're stopping and going. So it depends what they have at the funeral homes. I know many who don't do anything, but I do know funeral homes that use something just to keep the person from moving around in the casket. Then they'll take that out when they get to the church or wherever so they can use again. Um, and then you go and you set up. You would use back doors. You would use two people rather than six like pallbearers. So there are quite a few differences. So if we're closing that casket for the last time, I'm one that invites the family to help me if they're there. And I say, do you want to help tuck your mom in? Do you want to help tuck whoever in? I use those terms. I like the family to be as hands-on as they want to be. I've had people help lock the casket before. So just kind of reading the family and feeling them out and seeing what they kind of want to participate in. And usually if I'm doing it, people will step closer and closer and closer. And you know, they want to see and they want to be part of it, but they may not want to be hands-on. If they've had them at home under hospice care, I find that those families often may be more hands-on because they've been so hands-on up until the death, being at home and caring for the person and doing everything that they did. So they want to kind of finish that out. But I'll take the lay off the casket, or the overlay, which is that cloth piece that sits over the foot end that hangs down into the casket. Every casket doesn't have it. Like if it's a wood casket, I won't put that out. People pay good money for wood, show the wood. So I'll leave that off if it's a wood casket. But if there is one, I'll take it off and I'll fold it in half and I'll put it like a blanket down under the person. It's not that big, but it's a little something to like tuck them in kind of thing. You lower the bed if you're able to, if it's an adjustable bed, and crank. And I always go slow, make sure that the person's not like, I've seen some funeral directors and they just, everything they do is so fast and the casket gets rocking and it looks like this big mess, like we're in a hurry. And to me, like going slow, and it's almost like this dance that I do. And somebody's told me that before. I would never just think that of myself. But the way I move, I guess, is very, it's just how I move now, ingrained. But that's, initially I really thought about how I would do that. And I'll ask the family if they want to help close the lid, if they want to cover the person and kind of do, I will often, without even thinking about it now, I reach in and touch the person, like either on their hand, the top of their head, something like that. If you can't tell, I'm a I'm with my hands all the time. And so it's kind of the same thing with everything I do when it comes to families and stuff too. And then you close the lid, lock it. It might need locked by the casket key, or there might just be a little clip in the front that you just flip and it just is a simple lock. It depends on the, I guess, level of casket in terms of, not level as, I don't want to rank caskets that way. I think that's bad. If it's a more simple casket, it's going to have a simpler lock, plain and simple. No pun intended. So it just depends on what kind of casket has a different lock. And then leaving from that point on that last, we would ask the pallbearers to help carry out to the coach. So does that answer your question?
That does. Yeah, thank you very much. I had no idea about that. I mean, I've kind of studied the caskets, you know what I mean? Like at my dad's service, for example, he had an aluminum, I want to say it was like an orangey color casket. And I noticed this so on the lid where the part that's open, exposing the upper half, I've seen like the arms, they look like hinges almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, naturally being curious, I touched the casket and, just again, out of curiosity, and in the back of my mind, I always wondered what the process is to prepare them to head out to the funeral coach to make the stop at the church and then the cemetery, so
yeah. Well,
that answers the question.
You saying the hinge brings up another point when it comes to closing the casket. And I've seen funeral home staff that break caskets because they force a lid close, that they don't realize there's a release to that hinge. You can't, it's not being held up just on its own. It's locked up. And so people will take and try and force it down and it bends the hinge out. You can straighten it, but it may not glide through the glide after that if it's bent in the wrong way. So it's a bit tricky, but I've had funeral home staff that there was one time and this girl was working and I came in the next morning and I was like, oh, what happened to the casket? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know? And she finally fessed up that she wanted to close the casket because she was working and she had to keep walking past the casket because the man or woman in the casket was not in the visitation room. He was in like a hall. They were in like a hallway waiting for transition to move to somewhere else. And she kept walking by and she didn't like it. She just was creeped out. It was night. So she tried to close it, didn't realize that you couldn't, and bent the hinge. We were able to straighten it, but people don't mean to. I've had a family too. They were saying their last goodbyes and the mom it was to her daughter, and the mom she was done. She got to that point and she was like, I'm done. We're closing it. And she reached up to start pulling. I don't think I've ever gone down 9 steps and around a corner and over to a casket so fast in my life because I knew what was going to happen if she did that. So I burst through everybody and got over there. I was like, oh, okay, let's close the casket. It was one of those moments, I don't know what anybody saw or if they thought I was crazy, but I knew she was going to bend the hinge if she went to do what she was in motion to do, but we got it closed safely, but it can go sideways, which is not good. Sorry, that was a whole nother little thing.
Wow. Yeah. There's actually a cemetery right outside my apartment here. I live on the side of a building, and at nighttime, it's a little bit creepy if you're not used to these things.
Yeah.
I've heard something there for sure. And I've gone and walked in it before. It's an acre lot. The graves date back to the 1700s, and I think the most recent burial, through me doing a little bit of research, was August of 2000. And then, you get some 40s, 50s, 60s. So yeah, that's just right outside my apartment here. So yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Me being a taphophile, I go to cemeteries like 3 times a day, and I just walk the yard, and I like to look at the dates and stuff, so.
Awesome. Well, what's your number 2?
Okay, so my number 2, I guess, is I've heard from people that the grave diggers that water accumulates inside the vaults over time. Is that true? Can the casket be completely submerged in water over the years?
Yes. I mean, short story is yes. When you have a water table, and if you're digging below the water table, water can get in, and vaults are made out of concrete base, and concrete is permeable. So especially if all you have is a grave liner, which is a concrete base with a flat concrete top, it's completely permeable because there's no seal, there's no protective layer on the outside, inside. Now, even if you have those, it could still be permeated by water. Nothing is 100% assuredness, whatever that word is. But, and I've been to grave burials where they're pumping the water out of the grave just to keep it empty to do the burial. So, it is what it is. We're putting things in ground, like the vaults and stuff, and nature's going to win. Just like if you plant a tree next to a vault, nature's going to win, and those roots are going to bust through that thing eventually. Like, they are way more powerful than that vault that just stands still. So I think idealistically people want to believe one thing, but nature takes its course no matter what. But on the other side, who really knows what's all going on under the ground? It's not like we have cameras down there watching and seeing. And so it's hard to know, but things do happen, and water does happen. It's very natural that would happen.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, that's what I was told by the grave diggers. I didn't know how true it was or not, because a lot of rumors travel faster than the truth.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, didn't you know dead people sit up like all the way when they're in the funeral home, right? No. That's how, that's people spread things and they talk about it because it sounds better than, hey, dead people just lay there. Like, who wants to just repeat that rumor over time? Dead people don't sit up, guys. No, not happening. So, yeah.
Well, right, because it requires muscle movement. You know what I mean?
And it's not happening. No. What's your number 3, Dave?
So where I used to live, I lived in a high rise. I believe I sent you the email with the pictures the other day.
Yeah.
I've seen my fair share of bodies come out on the cots in my, I think, 3-4 years living there. I've seen just about everything come out. Now I noticed that it always starts with like the police, the fire, and the EMS.
Mm-hmm.
Fire department comes in, they do their thing, they look, okay, the person's deceased, they leave, and the police hang around. And I was wondering what happens. What's happening inside of the unit with the police hanging out in there? What do the police do with the body while they're waiting for you guys to arrive?
Nothing. They're avoiding touching the if they can. From what we've encountered, they don't want, sometimes it's hard to get some officers to even help you with they don't want to touch dead people. Just it's just not what they it's not their full job. But I've had some very, very, very helpful firemen, policemen, everything, and police women too, I guess. I say police, You say the gender thing and somebody's going to yell at me just because I said men instead of women, but
Nope.
no, typically if the police come to the scene and it's a situation that the police just need to be there for whatever reason, they'll typically be the coroner or medical examiner investigator, and they're going to check the scene. They're going to just make sure nothing is hinky or odd. They're going to check medications. Was the person on medications? They're going to count the pills. They're going to check for mail and phone messages and see maybe when the person was last active. So the police may be helping do those things with an investigator in the apartment or in the home, that they're trying to see, okay, well, this person's dead. Can we get a reference for maybe how long? Let's look and see when the last mail was open. Let's see when the last phone message was sent. Let's look at medication and count how many are there to make sure too many are not gone, or maybe we can find out how many are gone, and that'll maybe let us know when they took their last one. So they look into some of those things to help with their investigation to determine date of death. At least if they've been there for a week or two, you're not going to get a specific time. More than likely you're getting a day, hopefully, or the death certificate maybe even will say on or after this date, because okay, we knew the person was alive because they sent a text message on June 1st, but nobody heard from them after, and it's now June 14th, so they can say death was on or after June 1st, even though they can't narrow it down possibly. So some of that kind of stuff, they're just trying to fine tune and get as much information as they can to secure the scene and make sure everybody's got what they need. So we don't often have that police will stay on scene at like a house and stuff, unless it is not extensive, but it's something where it's extraneous situation. So I'm thinking like young person suicide where there's a weapon involved or something like that, that the weapon needs to be secured and things. So things like that maybe will require longer presence by the police officers. But it's been a long time since I've had police officers, really. I feel like even on scene when I've gone on a call.
Wow. Yeah. I have tried to chat with some of these funeral directors. I not obviously not ask them a ton of questions, when they're coming to remove somebody.
Yeah.
But I will say that not all of them are as friendly as you are, or as willing to share what you share with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for those of us that have these kinds of questions.
Well, and who you're encountering may not even be funeral directors, especially if you're in a larger area. It may just be a removal team from a company that's all they do is go pick up bodies all day and night. And they have no reference to anything else except they pick up a body and deliver them where they need to go. And that's all they do. So there are variable differences with who is actually there doing that removal as to what their knowledge base might actually be.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in 2010, I had made some phone calls around to different funeral homes in the area. I was very serious about getting into it. And I was told to call and ask to start small, like maybe assisting with, removals or door greeting or something,
Yeah.
just to get my foot in the door, it's something like, I don't know why I never pursued it, but it was definitely career choice number one for me,
Yeah.
back growing up. And, I did pursue it that much by making the phone calls, but I never actually. A lot of the funeral homes were like, well, this is family run, so we have the family members take care of that stuff, so I kind of gave up on it. But,
yeah. Circle back to it eventually.
Yeah. Because it's nice. It's cemeteries, caskets, all that stuff has always really inspired me and has always really grabbed a hold of me, like at a young age.
Yeah.
So
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I watch some of your videos and I see that.
Well, thank you for the questions, and thank you everyone for joining us. We have 3 states left. So if you're in Alaska, Vermont, or North Dakota, send me an email because I need to have a viewer from one of those 3 states or all of those 3 states. Ask me 3 questions just like Dave did. Thanks, Dave, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.